This tiny shallow tank is more than just an aquarium. It's a thriving ecosystem and a home to countless little lives. Each inhabitant plays a vital role in maintaining the balance of this miniature world. With each passing day, this tiny shallow continues to grow and thrive. I purchased this tiny shallow from an aquarium maker. It measures about 35 centimeters long, 25 centimeters wide, and 13 centimeters high. The first step was adding root taps, as I want this tiny shallow tank to be lush and full of plants. Luckily, I had a few left over from my earlier project. Next, I covered the base with a beach sand. I know that some people don't recommend using beach sand as a substrate, but sometimes you have to step outside the rules to see what works for yourself. And just so you know, I've been soaking this sand for more than a year. I found this piece of wood on Facebook Marketplace, and it's absolutely perfect for this aquarium. Not too big, not too small, just enough for making a statement. To bring it to life, I braided it with some lava rocks. Lava rock is an excellent choice for aquariums without a filter. Its porous surface provides plenty of space for beneficial bacteria to grow. These bacteria play a crucial role in breaking down fish waste and maintaining a healthy nitrogen cycle. I carefully glued the pieces together using some cotton to keep them in place. It was a bit tricky as I had to hide the cotton so it would be visible in the tank. I'm using aquarium safe glue, so there's no risk to the fish I plan to add later. It's kind of ironic though, since I'm using a beach sand as a substrate, which some might consider risks, but sometimes you have to take chances and let's hope everything comes together perfectly. With the hardscape all set, it's finally time to fill the tank with water. To prevent the sand from floating everywhere, I'm using a sponge to gently pour the water in. Just a quick tip, make sure to wash the sponge before using it, as we don't want any dish soap contaminate the water. I had an unexpected guest this time, probably because the stone had been sitting outside for a while. But no worries, I was able to safely remove it and return it to nature where it belongs. This plant is called Echinodorus, and I picked it up from my local fish store along with a few other plants. Planting it was a bit tricky though. Getting it through the tiny gap between the glass and the wood was a real challenge, but after a bit of patience, I managed to get it planted. I don't know the name of this plant. I found it inside one of the plants package. They didn't write the name of this plant. I believe this is called Alternanthera or something. Unfortunately, it keeps floating every time I plant them, so I added more sand to the aquarium. And now I can finally plant them without worrying they will float again. I'm using Rotala and Bacopa for the background. They are beautiful looking stem plants that can grow even without additional CO2. This is pearlweed, and I've heard that it can thrive without additional CO2, so I want to give it a try. Honestly, I've never grown this plant before, but I'm sure that with the right conditions, it will grow healthy. I also added some floating plants. They'll help absorb any excess nitrogen in the water, especially since I'm planning on skipping regular water changes in this tank. Then I add a small light to the tank and let them cycle for a couple weeks. The biofilms start to form on the surface of the aquarium. Sadly, there's a cloud thing on the lower part of the aquarium. A lot of plants didn't survive, so I replaced them with a new one. I also changed the water and leave it for another week. A week has passed and there's life everywhere in the tank. Tiny creatures are all over the glass, and while I'm not sure what they're called, I know they're a sign that the aquarium is starting to balance itself. I didn't intentionally add snails to the tank. They obviously came with the plants I bought. Some might consider them pests, but to me, they are a good cleanup crew. Speaking of cleanup, I added some Gaiety shrimp from my other tank to help keep things tidy. They might not be high-grade shrimp, but they deserve just as much love and care. As soon as they were introduced, they immediately started foraging for biofilm. That's one of many reasons why I love sharing so much. They're dedicated to keeping the tank clean. It's like they're always on a mission to help maintain the balance of an ecosystem. A month has passed and I think it was time to add more life to the tank. This little fish is called antler. They can crossbreed with guppies since they're closely related, and that's something I'm definitely planning to try in the future. To help them adjust, I turned off the tank lights so they won't be shocked by their new environment. I left them overnight to give them time to settle in, explore, and adapt to their new home at their own pace. The floating plants had begun to cover the surface and block the light, so I removed most of them to ensure the other plants receive enough light to grow properly. I also put this feeding ring that I make from airline tubing to make it easier for me to feed my fish. I tried to feed them through the ring, but they seemed more interested in the food that I accidentally spilled while preparing their meal. They certainly aren't the brightest mind in the tank. It didn't take long before the shrimp and snail took over the food that fell onto the substrate. I went to my local fish store to buy some bloodworm and I saw this little guy. I heard that pearl gourami is pretty chill fish and doesn't eat shrimp, at least not a big one. So I decided to introduce him to the shallow inhabitants. It's only been 10 minutes since I put him in the tank, but he doesn't show any fear at all, and he's pretty chill. The antler, on the other hand, is curious about their new friend. They will follow the gourami everywhere he goes, and I find it pretty funny. Unfortunately, the gourami is too big for this tank, so I decided to move him into a bigger tank. The shrimp population has been increased since the first time I introduced them to the tank. I think I need to consider building them a new home in the future.